One Piece chapter 1100, man. Chapter 1100, man. Like, my heart just keeps breaking for Kuma with every freaking chapter. With every chapter. Like, you knew going into this chapter based off the last one, like, hey, he's not going to get off this easy. You knew it. But to see how Oda just keeps his foot on your neck and continues layering it on thick. Kuma might have the most tragic backstory. I might be biased. This might be recency bias because I'm going through it now. When I reread One Piece, maybe I'll feel different. But man, this is tragic. Essentially, as Vegapunk is going through all this stuff with him, Kizaru shows up and he's like, hey, you know so much about this lab, but you don't know everything. That's like kind of implying like, hey, there's been a transponder snail listening in on the whole conversation. So essentially, what we end up finding out is that Saturn is like, hey, we're doing negotiations here. It's not up to you. And Saturn's like, dude, why would we fund the operation for some random girl that we don't even know? We have no interest in her. We have all the interest in Kuma. And so he basically says like, hey, look at the situation for what it is. Kuma, he might be fit to be the model that we use for clones. He might have all the stuff you're looking for, but he's also a pirate with a nearly 300 million berry bounty on his head. What would it say if we make a man such as that the model for our clones? So here's the thing, Kuma, I can't trust you. And this is one of those things like Saturn knows he is negotiating from a place of strength. He knows that Kuma will do anything for his daughter. And so he doesn't need these stipulations. And yet he puts them on them anyway in order to let him know I got control over you. He's basically hedging his bets. It's smart. It's cruddy, but it is smart. Basically, condition number one is like, hey, we do this, you're going to join the Seven Warlords as a pirate. And it's because Ace, who's a rookie at this point in the timeline, has knocked out one of the Seven Warlords, and so they're searching for a replacement. And so the pirate world is getting restless, and having someone as strong as you would definitely come in handy. And then he says, number two, my second condition is that you're going to be a human weapon for the Navy. And when Kuma hears it, he says, well, what do you mean? So weapon, I got to be somebody that you guys mess with my body with? You make me into a cyborg, basically? And when Vegapunk hears this, he's like usually the wheel's turning because he sees where this is going. And I like how like the story is just slowly giving you the opportunity to see Vegapunk from a more humane aspect. Because even someone like Vegapunk has redeeming factors. And I like how it transitions over where Kizaru's like, we could get some real use out of this guy. He can help us with the Navy. And Saturn is just doing politician speak. He's like, Kuma has a prior record as a revolutionary activist. So, say we make him into a cyborg. What's to say he doesn't go back to Dragon? We can't have those valuable resources of ours used against us. Which is bring me to my third condition. You have to abandon your free will in your mind. And when that happens, the way that you see Vegapunk face go from having the steam coming out of his ears, so all of a sudden he's getting super pissed off, he's shouting, he says the quiet part out loud. He says, you're asking him to die. Because at the end of the day, when you don't have your free will, when you don't have your own mind, you're not human. You are essentially taking away what it means to be human, because that is what makes humans human. Free will. Being able to think for yourself, think on your own, feel on your own. He's taking away his humanity. And Vegapunk says, if you do this, you're asking me to basically murder him. You're asking me to turn him into a robot. And Saturn, being as foul as he is, says, who do you think you are talking to me like that? And you can see the agony on Kuma's face as he realizes what it is that he's got to do in order to save his daughter. And the way that Oda draws that panel and uses that to get us to a point where Kuma accepts, like, my God, this is so beautiful. Because symbolically, you get what he's saying. There's no line that a parent won't cross if it means giving their child a normal life, if it means curing their child of an ailment. So I like what Oda's doing here. And Kuma even says that, like, You know, I thought that his demands are going to be something outside my control. I can do this. And the way that he's shedding the tears as he says it, he knows that his life is essentially ending, but his daughter's is beginning now. And for a moment, it almost looks as if Kizaru looks bothered by what he's seeing, because he's got that super small panel. He's got that super small panel where he hasn't said a word. And you see how Bonney is just living it up. She's running around smiling, etc., ignorant to everything that's going on. And because she's ignorant to everything that's going on, Kuma says, I have some demands of my own. I don't want her to know that she was sick, and I don't want her to know the price of these operations that she's going to be going under, in particular what I have to do. And so now we see why she blamed Vegapunk the way she did, because she did not know the truth of this whole situation. And we find out that Kuma's process is going to take 2 years. And for her, for Bonney's operation, it's going to take half a year to treat the Sapphire Scales, and then another year before she can go out into the sun altogether safely. And so that was something I was wondering for a while. I was like, well, if she has this illness, and how is she able to go out into the sea and the sun, etc.? Now we find out. And so we know for at least a year and a half, father and daughter are able to spend some time together. And we then move over where you have an opportunity where Kuma is getting more information sent over to him, where Kuma said, like, hey, your daughter, we're going to hold on to her for a little bit. We're going to keep eyes on her just to make sure that once she's cured, you don't do any funny business. We have to be absolutely certain. So we're going to take custody of your child. If you violate that order, you try and contact her in any way, after the procedure's done, she's going to be turned into a slave. And you know he doesn't want that for his child. Even though it's not his biological child, he doesn't want that for her. You can tell that the scars are still there from what happened with his mother, where he could handle the work and his father could handle the work, but his mother couldn't. And so when Kuma realizes he'll never meet her ever again, he says, like, I don't want her to know about her disease. I don't want her to know that she's been held hostage. I want you to allow her to grow up with a normal life inside the church that she was raised in. And Saturn says it doesn't matter where she's at as long as we can keep eyes on her. And you just get like the montage information where you see father and daughter, and you see how they're spending like their last year and a half together, or rather their last 6 months together, because Bonney has to spend a year away from Kuma after the procedure. And so you see them sleep in the same bed. You see Bonney as she's drawn stuff for him, and you see that Kuma's taking her back to the church and everything. It's one of those things where, as the time's going on, you can tell that this is absolutely wrecking Kuma. And it's just more foreshadowing, in my opinion. Like when they're doing the Nika dance, it's more foreshadowing. Like when Kuma gets an extended interaction with Luffy when he's in Gear 5, he's probably going to break out of it, because you can't, like, you can like, quote unquote, remove someone's humanity and their mind, but you really can't. And I think Luffy's going to break out of that, because there's just some things science can't do. And so when Kuma drops off Bonney and leaves her at the church, you have Nurse Alpha, which that looks like Khalifa, because it's Cypher Pool. Khalifa basically says, like, hey, you know, snapping a little girl's neck, it'd be really easy. She's so small. Keep that in mind. And Kuma says, I have no intention of coming back for her. Don't even worry about that. And he drops a line off and he says, Bonney, thank you for being born. And the narrator just drops off some very cold lines. And you see some of the reactions with the different warlords where they're learning what happened with Kuma. But essentially, the narrator says they called this pirate a tyrant. But Bartholomew Kuma was utterly faithful to his orders from above. His presence among the Seven Warlords, it terrified the pirates of the world. Crocodile's like, yo, what about the witness we got from the rainmaking ship? Nico Robin's curious. You know, Nico Robin's already seen through the BS. You see how Doflamingo's like, oh, okay, so we got someone like this on our side. You see how Alvida is like, hey, Kobe, tell me that I'm stronger than him, right? You see how Blackbeard and Whitebeard, Marco, Jinbei, Ace all reading everything. Boa Hancock is being brought up to speed on everything. She has no intention of going to Central. However, the thing that we do see here is that when Dragon reads the paper, he's already realizing that there was some price on there. He probably feels some kind of a burden off of the fact that he sent Kuma to Vegapunk and that this is likely connected in some kind of way. And you can tell he feels guilty and that there's more to the situation he was not made aware of. And you see how essentially Sabo doesn't believe in it. And we end off the chapter where Kuma is writing letters to his daughter. And we see that he's just outside the East Blue. And it looks like he's just outside of Windmill Village. So I'm gonna be very curious to see where this is going. Like, did Kuma meet Luffy prior to this? That's gonna be interesting, man. That's gonna be very interesting. And it's Dragon nearby. That's what I want to know, man. I'm getting excited, man. So my chapter question to you guys is, it looks like this might be the end of Kuma's flashback. Where do you rate it from a 1 to 10? But so always, guys, like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching until the end. Have an awesome day, guys.